to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today on the show, I have one of the rare pleasures that we get here on the show, which is interviewing a commercial designer from one of these outstanding, amazing global interior design firms. But we have that pleasure today. I am joined by Darrell Long of Wilson Associates. Darrell has more than 25 years of design experience, and he is currently a regional managing director for Wilson Associates. He oversees the design direction of the Los Angeles, the Las Vegas, and the Dallas studios. Throughout his career, Darrell has set new standards for luxury, comfort, and innovation in hospitality interior design across the world. He believes that it is important to develop your critical thinking in order to be an exceptional designer. He tells us today that the magic of creativity is in the story and in the art behind the design. This is something that he is very passionate about. He considers it his mission to share it with you, his design colleagues, as well as the younger designers that come up through the firm and that he oversees and trains and mentors. Darrell's commitment to storytelling has got me thinking about our show sponsor, J-Pour Living. As you know, J-Pour Living is your favorite rug partner. That's right, 95% of interior designers rate J-Pour Living as better than other rug companies. But we know from the episode that with Asha, the CEO, that J-Pour's story goes beyond just producing the highest quality artisan rugs. They also have a drive to create beautiful lives, not just for you, their customers, or your clients, but also for the artisans who create their products and for their employees. Their new fully shoppable website is created for you, making it easier than ever to browse. It even includes a custom calculator and real-time inventory tool. Go to jpourliving.com/Luann to sign up for your trade account today. That's JAIPUR living.com/Luann. All right, now, before we get into today's episode, I want to just set the table that you may experience one or two emotions today. I think some of you may feel possibly a knee-jerk response to defend the way you approach design, and others might have a little gut check that maybe there is a different way of thinking about something. But I want to say before we get started, I want you to just hear and listen to what Darrell is saying and maybe pay attention to how you're feeling and thinking about it, okay? Because regardless of whether you ultimately agree or how much of it you take to heart and maybe decide to make changes, I think we can always agree there is something that comes from every conversation, and we can always find something that sparks us to do better in our business or our design. So, curious your opinion on this on the other side of this interview. Right now, I'm just absolutely delighted to introduce you to Darrell Long. Hi, Darrell. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Good morning, LuAnn. How are you doing today?
I am terrific. And Darrell, I don't often get the treat of having a commercial interior designer on the show. I have come to the conclusion that it's because designers like yourself that work at big firms like Wilson Associates, okay, are just too darn busy to sit around and talk on podcasts.
I'm not sure if you would call it a treat, but yeah, you got a good point there.
Yeah, no. I know it's one of the things that my audience does ask for more. It's one of the few things that they ask for that I do have trouble delivering on is more conversations with commercial designers. And I think too, this level of having the experience of running big departments and overseeing many people, and in your case, having the experience and expertise of not only executing really amazing projects, but also really having that career of managing and overseeing the deliverables where lots of people are reporting to you on it. And so it's a fun thing for us here, and we thank you for your time. One of the things that was interesting, because I do send out this little questionnaire and ask you guys to think, one of the things that you said back to me was, I'm going to just read it, because this was like, oh, I want to go here. It said, I ask a potential guest to like make a bold claim or state a question or start with a statistic. Like, tell me why you want to talk to my audience. And when under the title of Make a Bold Claim, you wrote, unfortunately, the younger generation of designers have been following a lot of behavior pattern of mimicking other designers' work and the overuse of borrowing concepts from Pinterest. This leads to a lack of critical thinking throughout the design phase, and you see how it also in turn hampers the collective team effort. And so that just like, I was like, there we are. That's what I want to talk about. And what was cool about it was later, because of course I always ask you, if you're going to tell me a problem, tell me if you have a solution for it. You said something to the effect of, you got to get away from Pinterest and you've got to go to other resources and other places. And as a devil's advocate, I said to you off air, so, I mean, just thinking about the world as technology now. So does it really matter if a millennial goes to Pinterest for ideas and inspiration rather than design books? Like, does it have to be the way you and I would have done it 20 years ago and actually go to a book? And you had an outstanding answer to that. So would you start us right there, Darrell?
Sure. And you went straight there. So great. Well, it's a bit of a long story. And ironically, it kind of starts with my father. He was a military officer. And he told me and conveyed to me a lot of crazy stuff in life as I was growing up. Some things that I use today, like, you judge a business person by the way he ties his tie and his shoes. And, he told me all these other crazy things that some made sense in life, and some of them were the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard in my life. But that's what he was. He was preparing me for life and stupidity all at one time. But the one thing that he said growing up was, you are either a follower or you're a leader. One of the two. Pick one, son. So I was like, okay, I always had this in my head. And, as if you think about somebody of my age, and as long as I've been in this profession, I have 1 foot without computers and 1 foot in computers. In other words, my professional career started when computers weren't in any kind of existence. We still drew documents. Our conceptual designs were inspirations of things outside of design. In other words, if I was doing something in the, just hypothetically, if I was designing a hotel or whatnot in a desert or an Arabic area or something like that, I would be researching nothing of design. I would be looking at mathematics. I would be looking at music, different type of cultural significance surrounding a concept, as opposed to just plagiarizing other people's work and taking them off the internet. But that leads me to something, of what we could get into a really very much a rabbit hole conversation that, if you look at society now and everything we force feed ourselves, everything that we are. In other words, we sit there on our phone and we read our own news feed. So we're only reading what we want. We're only listening to the music that we want. We're only shopping in areas that we want or that people are telling us to, the influencers. I hate that word, by the way. And, all we're doing is looking at other people's stuff and giving it back to us. We're not looking beyond what the scope of what we want. So we're not challenging ourselves. So if I look back at what my father said, we spend all day following people. We hit that follow button. And I think that's wrong.
Wow.
I think that there's that element, those two beautiful words, critical thinking, which are should be the linchpin of everything that we do as creative people. And I think that we have a tendency to get lost in it. Now, is it something that was created out of laziness? Was it something created out of that colleges and schools aren't teaching critical thinking anymore? Or is it just that clients are so damn demanding that we don't have the ability to do the serious research? I think it's a combination of all three.
Let me ask you a question about that. There's a lot in there, but the thing that just hit me is it occurs to me that you may actually have knowledge and experience with college teaching. I don't know it to be true, but I know often at your level in the profession, you are invited to teach a semester here and there. Is critical thinking not part of, do you feel like the colleges are not doing a good job of that in the design field? Because I know other disciplines that is a specific thing to teach critical thinking, like business, classes and business, you know what I'm saying?
I do, and it's a great question. I believe that. Well, I actually don't believe. I think I can speak firsthand. I lecture quite a bit, and I'm in that type of circuit, and then the roundtable discussions, the panels, and all that, so on and so forth. But as far as standing in front of a class and speaking, I'm going to try to reserve that till I get close to retirement.
Okay.
But what I can't speak directly of is the people I interview and the people I employ and the people that I interact with. And I can say with utmost security that it is not something that I see in the process of way people think nowadays, and particularly young designers. They don't look outside of what's immediately in their face. And the idea of trying to come up with something that is purely honest. And, if you think back about Hemingway, that you've got to write that one honest statement. And when you write that one honest statement, the book comes about or the story comes about. The younger generation of designers just don't understand that basic philosophy, that the concept is that critical thinking of a concept, creating a reason why we draw circle, line, and squares, why that roadmap to the eventual design, and how you connect a conceptual idea to the final idea of the design. They don't get it. They think that they're going to create a story like, oh, Jill has an apartment in New York City, and this is what her life is like. That's not a concept. That's a stupid story. A concept is like getting into the meat and potatoes of why we do what we do. It's dependent upon the geographic research of, where the context of, where this hotel or where this space is. You talk about, what the brand is, what is a basic idea. I mean, you got to dig deep. You're almost coming up with a college thesis on every time you create a concept design, because you really want, something to chew on. And if you do it right, if I could backtrack a little bit, it's also at the point where, I do a bunch of writing. When we put concept deliverables together, we put together a team of writers, graphic designers, we've got a fashion designer, and then we've got architects and interior designers. And we craft stories. It's storytelling, for lack of better terms. And when we do that, it's vastly important that there's a lot of writing. And I would say probably, I'd say 85% of the time a client doesn't read it. But then the ones that do read it, I convey to them that, this book is yours. This deliverable is yours. But ultimately, it's for us, the designers, because it becomes a roadmap. It keeps us in our swim lane. I'm the first person to start designing out of that swim lane, and my staff starts throwing stuff at me. So, including the book. Stay with the concept. So it becomes a really metaphoric roadmap for everything that we do. So the idea that thinking and stretching that noggin and getting the most you can out of an idea, I think is just really lacking. It's much too easy. And the internet was created to help us become smarter. And my personal opinion, I think ultimately today, we see it making us dumber. Because our minds become lazy. It's too easy to go to something and pull something off the internet. I mean, think about it. If you were learning an instrument, you can't just immediately pick up just sit at the piano and play Mozart. You got to go through the idea of training your brain to learn how to play, and then learn how to play those notes. And then from learning how to play the notes, you've got all those variables of timing and tone and texture and all that stuff. So if you use that as an analogy, it's the same thing. We've got to rethink. We got to teach the younger staff that you've got to use your brain. You can't just use your eyes and a mouth.
So, whoa.
Okay. I told you I talked to you.
No, not at all. There's just so much in there. So a couple of the points that I want to clarify. What I think I'm hearing, Darrell, is if I were to equate it to a poorly written sitcom, or a poorly written rom-com, okay? But I'm thinking sitcom because I feel like there is a good example as well. So a poorly written sitcom simply presents me with one-liners, jokes, at its face value. Maybe if I don't think too deeply about it, I'm entertained. I've sat there, I've laughed, I've slapped my knee a couple of times. I'm, a half hour later, I'm happy. But when I watch like Seinfeld, and something seemingly at the beginning seems like an offhand separate incident, but then all of a sudden it's coming through the middle story, and all of a sudden this crazy thing pops up at the end that winds me right back so cleverly to the top. And I think, is that what I'm hearing with you is going on Pinterest and duplicating with enough changes to be your own is like just putting out a funny sitcom, but really doing your research, connecting maybe the time and the space and the history of the plot of land that the hotel might be on, or the legend, the legacy of the owners who have owned it, or whatever it might be, is more approaching that thoughtful approach that a great comedic writer has. Am I understanding your point?
Yeah, you are. And I'm glad you said Seinfeld, because I think that every answer in life exists in any Seinfeld episode. I mean, I just, like, my wife gets mad at me because I can quote Seinfeld. It's that good. But no, your analogy is 100% correct. And I think that, we're storytellers. I mean, ultimately that's what we think we should be, or I think we should be. Because good art, great art, is always about a story. If you look at the important artists of history, whether it be a musician, again, go back to Mozart or Keith Richards or Michelangelo to Picasso, their craft is 100% synonymous with their personality. And I mean, there is no light or bifurcation between who they are in public or private and what you're listening to or seeing. And my goal and my job is to influence these younger designers to start thinking that way, to help them find their voice. And as long as they're looking at other people's work and pulling other people's work into a idea that they think is theirs, isn't their idea, that is just collecting other people's thoughts. It's not creating their own thought.
Okay. And to your analogy of the piano, it would also be, to your point, the years that it takes to develop and understand and read the notes and the tone and all of that. The other side of it would be, and just teach me what notes to hit, whether I know if it's a C or a D. Just teach me the order to do it, to play this one-off song. I can't read a stick of music. I can't come down and sit here and do a different song. But I can, by rote, be taught how to move my fingers to create a song. And that is, to your mind, what is the problem is pervasive now, is that a lot of designers are simply looking at other people's music and sitting down to do it, but not understanding why the chair, why the scale, why the selection. Is that what you're saying? They're just duplicating the beauty.
Just duplicating the beauty, right. Devoid of any emotion.
Right.
If we look back in history, and I use this analogy quite a bit too, is I'm a big music buff. Just a big art person, but music is very much a passion of mine. And I always joke and argue with friends, like-minded friends, about how much I adore old albums. Again, I show my age. And everybody always argues to me that, oh, CDs were great. And I explain to them that CDs killed music. And they just look at me like I'm stupid. And I tell them, I convey to them, it's like, okay, an album is 38 minutes at max. Side A and side B, totally 38 minutes. So any given time, you could only put maybe 7 to 8 pieces of music within 38 minutes. So the artist had to pick their 7 or 8 best songs to go on that album. With the advent of CDs, that now became 90 minutes. So you had 7 or 8 great songs, and then you had about 6 or 7 of really terrible ones. And you diluted the idea, you diluted the thinking, you diluted the passion, you diluted that curation of ideas or that storytelling. When an album, it was side A, side B. You told a story. That is very akin to what we want to do. You know, you need to put together enough information with your mind to get from A to Z with as little as information, but you have to provide a significant amount of information. So it's there is a curating aspect about it and the editing aspect about it, but any good story can be told, you know, with 1,000 pages, or in Hemingway's sense, you know, the old story of him. I don't know if you're familiar with it, the bet that Hemingway made when he was in France. I think it was Fitzgerald and a couple other writers at the time, and there was $100 bet where they had 6 words. They could say the story had to be 6 words, and somebody had to cry to win. And Hemingway's was baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Ugh.
Exactly. See, that gives you goosebumps right there.
It does.
Granted, it's the brilliance of Hemingway, but that is the perfect analogy of somebody thinking critically, and somebody passionate, and somebody who can tell and say so much with so little. And I think that's kind of in the nutshell of what I try to get out of the younger staff.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I really did get goosebumps. That's crazy.
Yeah, I still got them.
Yeah, cool. yeah, definitely. So let me ask you about this presentation that you do, or the deliverable that your firm gives. So, of course, Wilson Associates has resources that the typical average interior design firm does not. Okay, and by the way, the typical average interior design firm probably doesn't need to deliver this kind of deliverable, but I'm sure our designer friends are like, "What is that book about?" So
right.
You said that you have writers, fashion designers, your design staff, architects. So when you deliver this book, you happen to mention that you know that some clients don't even read it. And I get the value of having it internally, okay? But are we talking about, when you say you have writers on staff, are you as a team are developing your critical thinking on the concept and the design and why you're doing everything, but you're actually putting that into story form?
Yeah, I guess we would, when we sit down and we start a project, we'll sit down and come up with a stream of thought, and then we'll start writing. Even gotten to the point where if we resort back and kind of look at the idea of Pinterest, you know, it got to the point where I would just tell everybody to turn their computers off and just start writing. So we'll start crafting a story, and that story will be in words. And as we talk about the story, you know, that, let's see, if I could backtrack a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's two philosophies. Well, there was one philosophy in my industry of hospitality design where they would deliver a concept deliverable, and it goes like this. You would have a little bit of an introduction in the beginning. And then the remaining pages, they would take a section, and there would be 10 images you would pull off Pinterest of what your lobby could look like. And then they would do the same with the guest room. They would do the same with the restaurants. So you're basically looking at a word on the presentation that said lobby, 10 images of something else that you think will make it look like it. And I had a client one time ask me and say, okay, Darrell, can you just show me something we've never seen before? I was like, okay, well, you're asking for a lot, and you're asking for something that's rather challenging. So I sat down with my team. I said, okay, look, we got to rethink the way that we present the way we put these books together. And I refer to it as a book, our deliverable.
Mm.
So we thought that maybe we should kind of start touching base on what's in our head and how we're going to do things, not necessarily sit there and tell them and show them through other people's images what we're going to do. So the hotel just happened to be a project in Palm Springs. And the last thing I wanted to do was plagiarize California modernism. But I'm a modernist designer at heart. So what we did was we crafted a really beautiful, and when I say a story, I mean, it reads like a story, but it talks about those things we talked about a few minutes ago, about all of the context of the area, modernism and all this stuff. And then we decided that, okay, if we take these beautiful tenements of what modernism is, and we started referring to it as a toolbox, form follows function, honesty of materials, all these things that make great modernist design. And then we started defining those and how that toolbox became how we were going to design the hotel. And so we started crafting a story through words of how we were going to do things. And then we would take images to support it. So the images weren't of other people's work. They became those images of before the computers. They were pictures of the desert. They were pictures of, if we were talking about a palette, they were influenced by maybe a rattlesnake skin or the colors of the snake skin, not necessarily the skin, but the colors, or the colors of a desert at dawn. So then through the idea of talking about how we were going to do it, the images started supporting it, and then the story started coming together. And then it became a very cohesive story about how we're going to design it. And ultimately, by dictating how we were going to do it, they had a vision in their head of what it eventually was going to look like.
Wow. Okay. So the thing is that I'm just going to go from a practical standpoint. From a practical standpoint, you still are human beings with dozens of images already in your mind. You are still looking around outside you, wherever it is. But the shift, I can see not only for your client who now understands and really feels like a unique concept is coming, because it's not a picture of somebody else's completed room. And you're evoking what type and style of design you're going to go to by having images of other, like you said, the desert, the snake, XYZ. But I can see that in training your team and your employees, your staff, your younger staff, it keeps them from just doing copycat design, right? It's like, well, what would I design if I was only thinking about the feeling or the style or the look of the desert? Is that what you're trying to do in training them up?
Yeah, I think that is, you're 100% correct. And we call that the Seabiscuit effect, where in the beginning, you've got your blinders on and you're just looking at what is our goal? What are we writing? What are we doing? And at those first couple of days when we start the process of the concept is where we have to stretch our minds, because whatever images we're evoking or we're conjuring is in our head at that point, because we're writing. And we're just like reading a good book with an actual physical book with pages and typeface and stuff like that. You become engulfed in that. So when you start taking the blinders off, and then we start talking to each other, and we start, cultivating what these ideas are, and then we start editing all the words. Then the images, when we look at each other as a group, and typically it's about 4 or 5 people at that time, we start looking at each other and we start influencing each other, and we start going, okay, that's a great paragraph. Let's do this. Here's some images I think that supports that. So then it just really starts to come together in a really nice collaborative fashion.
Wow. Amazing. And can I ask you a question? I guess I just have a knee-jerk reaction always when any industry or whoever says the kids today or the generation today. And I don't have your firsthand experience by any stretch of the imagination. And with your experience of, I'm sure, of interviewing, hiring, training, mentoring them up and out of your firm, I don't question for you that the observation is real. But I do have to just push back. It can't be all or none, right? It can't just be all designers under 35 do this. What do you think it is? Do you think it's just they're not exposed to someone that has this philosophy and this understanding and challenges them? Or do you really think that their thought process has been altered by the advent of technology?
Well, anything I say at this point is going to sound like, get off my lawn.
No, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I just feel like, look, you and I are probably, I don't know how old you are, but you've read for a couple of times, you know what I mean? And so I'm probably older, but the point is, I mean, we know that in the 50s, they said that of us in the 70s. You beatniks,
Exactly.
Blah, blah. You ruined your music, and it's like, come on. It just isn't that bad,
Well, and that's a struggle because, I do find myself, going, get off my lawn. And, my wife looks at me and goes, God, you idiot. But, I'm trying to, I want to answer it honestly without sounding like the old guy in the newspaper in my hand in boxers and and a hound dog on the porch. But I mean, oh boy, I'm going to get in trouble here. I do think there has been a shift in, I still go back to those beautiful words, critical thinking. I think that the industry, from a younger perspective, has gotten lazy. And I say it, we've spoken great detail about the idea of concept design. And, because that's the beginning of the project. But, on the flip side of the coin of the concept design, in hospitality and commercial design, we have a buttload of documentation to do. I mean, a typical hotel is probably approximately 3,000 to 5,000 sheets of construction documentation. And that doesn't include specifications. Whoa. So what I'm finding is not only are their thought process to think critically, not existing, or obviously there's exceptions to what I'm saying, but I think in general critical thinking isn't part of their academic program. But the fact that they weren't taught to put an actual architectural set together is just as bad as the ability to critical think. I think what you have is that, and what I'm seeing with most students coming out of college and when I'm interviewing, is that they really want to, create something pretty, and it stops and starts right there. That's it. I want to go to a 3D model and create something that can never be built before, and I just want to do what I want to do, and that's it. And I want to be paid six figures out of college for it.
Don't forget that
now,
part.
that statement totally sounds like get the hell off my lawn, but I can honestly say that in my experience, and again, there's exceptions to the rule and exceptions to that statement that I just said, because I've employed a couple of them. But in general, if I had to generalize this, I honestly feel that's the truth.
Yeah, I would lean more towards with you on that one. Now, here's the thing, Darrell. What I know is that the designers that come to this show, they come to this show with an absolute, genuine desire and thirst for making themselves better designers and better business people. I know that. This is not, nobody comes here to hang out and think, let's, it's not that. So if a designer is listening and having a little bit of a gut check and thinking, maybe I might be a little more guilty of this than I would have thought. What are some strategies? I imagine you probably don't even hire the young designer that doesn't exhibit critical thinking during the interview process. So you're not probably faced, but you still are probably working, always enhancing it and developing it. So are there particular tricks, or not tricks, but tips and strategies or tools that someone listening would say, okay, I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to be a critical thinker. I want to be a conceptual designer. What should I do?
Good question. First thing I would say, obviously, turn off your computer. And obviously at this point, what I say is maybe not as applicable today as it was 6 months ago in the current lockdown climate that we're in. But if we take away that variable of this equation, to me, go to a museum. And I know these might be high level stuff, but go to a museum. Don't just look at a painting. Walk up to it. Get 6 inches from it. Look at the brushstroke. Ask yourself these questions that, why did they do it? What is the context of the painting? Why did they paint it? When was it painted? Why? What are the images? What are they trying to evoke? Do I feel any sense of emotion? If you look at painters like, you always hear it, my 5-year-old child could paint a Jackson Pollock or a Mark Rothko. But, to me, that's a pretty crude statement, because if you actually start looking at the time and the context and the reasoning behind these beautiful paintings or these pieces of music, you start to ask yourself, it's like, oh, he was the first one to do it. Oh, he was trying to create a painting without actually touching a brush. When you start to learn the variables of why these people did these things, then you start to learn. You start to go, okay, so Pollock tried to, his intentions of his drip paintings was to paint something that evoked an emotion. Instead of painting a painting of the chair, he wanted to paint something that gave him the emotion of looking at the chair. And he wanted to do it without touching a brush. So and then at that point, when you start looking at that and studying and reasoning why these great people did things, then you start to go, okay, well, how do I apply that to design? That on the flip side of the coin there, if you look at today's, what I see a lot of today's younger group too, is that they're very quick to discount things of the past. My God, I don't know how many times somebody said, okay, boomer to me, but that's a whole nother conversation. And I can't tell you my responses because this is probably a family show. But the idea of, if you think about, a lot of, a good portion of things that I've turned on to younger staff, they come back and are slightly offended. They're like, well, this artist did this and I can't look at him because of this, for this social reason. And I look at him, it's like, well, Straczynski, I can't pronounce his name, The Rite of Spring. If you look at different Michelangelo or Picasso, Pollock, a lot of artists from the Hellenistic period forward, their art was created under what today we would call, questionable accounts, or, questionable, was the person a nice person? A good portion of them, the answer is that no.
Right.
But that doesn't omit the fact that they created incredible art out of whether it be emotional distress or, something, going on in their life, or, Michelangelo's sense, his conflict with the sexuality and his conflict with the church, or, Pollock's conflict with just himself and everybody else in the world. It is, if we start looking at our past and we start saying we want to omit it, then we're really killing critical thinking. We need to embrace the ugly just as good as we embrace, and just as strong as we embrace the pretty. Because sometimes something so egregiously grotesque can be the most beautiful thing in the world.
It's interesting. So what you're saying, and I just want to recap this. This is great. So you're saying, look, get out of your box. Go to museums, go to anything, go to do anything. And I hear during COVID that's not so easy, but maybe we could give them a pass on using the computer now, because that was your first tip, to turn the computer off. But there's probably ways to, inspect these works of art. Not that it's the same as being in person. I know that when you say look at the brushstroke, what does it make you feel when you look at this piece of art? It's going to be different than it is when you're in real life with it. However, to understand some of the background and, even what you just taught us about Pollock. I never knew that. I don't study art. I never have. But that I could have learned by reading if I wasn't at the Pollock Museum or something like that. So first thing is just get out of your box, expand your world beyond looking at other people's design. I think that's what the biggest message that you're saying is that look for places and things in our world that create a new inspiration in you. It could be graffiti. It could be, the way the garbage dump looks at the, end of the street in the sunlight, right? This is what you're saying, right? Get out of the copy mode and the mimic of other people's pretty. Okay, so I love that. That's really good. Yeah. That's like a great thing, because I'm always asking my designers to time block. I'm always asking them to intentionally build their business and work on their business. So it could be 1 hour a week where you just get out of your head and you inspect that garbage can and see, what does the form look like? What does the shapes look like, right? Just beyond what you would normally do, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to, excuse me, our first beginning of the conversation about my father's statement was, quit being a follower, start being a leader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I find myself, and I've got most people on my team doing this as well. I've got certain pieces of music that I'll listen to when I do certain things. If I'm writing, there's one specific album that I will listen to over and over. I don't know why, and I don't even know why this album it does it for me, but when I listen to it, I write better. When I'm drawing, I listen to a different type of music. So there are certain pieces of music and certain genres of music that I will put on my earphones when I work to put me in the mood to do things. That's another thing of creating influences that I know, because when it's all said and done, we are, in the design industry, we're not musicians or artists where we can sit around for days or months and figure out when the muse hits us, okay, we'll start working. We have to be a machine. We have to walk into work every day and create something. And if 2% of what I create is brilliant, I think I've done an okay job. Just as long as that other 98% is better than most. But if I could squeeze out 2% to be really, really, really good, then I've done a good job. But I've gotten to the point where, and I talk about this a lot, that find your muse, find something that influences you to help curate your emotions, because once you can manage your emotions in design, then you can take them to wherever you need them to go. So you're kind of manipulating yourself.
Right. Well, I have to say, 100% agree. When I have to do serious writing, and I don't mean that the content's serious, but I got to get it done. Like, sweetie, this is when it's blocked in. It's the craziest thing. I put on Baroque music. I don't listen to classical music at any other time. I don't know I don't know a single thing about it. I don't know the artist. I don't know if it's Chopin or Bach, or even if Chopin or Bach or Baroque. I don't know anything about it. But when I put that station on Pandora, it's like subconsciously it triggers me. Yes, sweetie, we're paying attention here. We're putting out we're doing some content writing now. Let's get it out there and get it done. And I don't necessarily actually hear it. It's just it's to you. It's like it's just like you said. It's a self manipulation. But it does. It just triggers my subconscious mind that we are working now. We are not doing email. We are not thinking about anything else. We are getting some stuff done. And at the same time, if I try and do any kind of writing with any kind of fun music on, I recognize that I'm listening to the fun music, right? It's like, what are you doing? But if I were trying to generate ideas for writing, I'm going to go move my body. I'm going to get out the door. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to do something, because when I move is when the ideas come. And so if I need the inspiration, I'm going to move. Once I have the inspiration, it's me and Baroque.
Right. The funny thing is, the album that I listened to was Black Sabbath's first one.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I don't know why that one does it. I love jazz. I love the bebop, Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk period of jazz. And, I love rock and roll and different classical opera. I love all types of music. But for some reason, that one album, just as soon as I put it on and I start writing, that's where the magic starts.
Isn't that
And
something?
I'll just over and over and over. And then when I'm done writing, I turn it off and I change the music.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. And I think that's a good practice. It is a good thing to develop, to understand what you said. Find your muse. What is it that inspires you to be creative? And to me, I can't say that without saying the end of it is to stick to it in the moment or during the process, because, I could, I don't know, skip down the road and be creative. But if I've got to be creative and get something accomplished, that's a different story.
Yeah. When it's all said and done, we are a business.
Yes, exactly.
There there's not an infinite timeline to what we have to do.
Exactly right. Well, I have to say, such great insights. I love this conversation, Darrell, and I really hope that the designers, our friends listening, that even if you find a tiny bit of yourself in here, just challenge yourself, right? To just do more, be better, to, like you said, create something new. And your dad said, be the follower rather than be the leader rather than the follower.
Yeah. Quit hitting that follow button.
Quit hitting the follow button. Very good. Thank you so much, Darrell. The people that work for you are so lucky. I mean, thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
I appreciate it. And thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. And stay off my lawn.
Before I give you my 2 cents on this, let me thank Monogram for sponsoring the show. When we think of the story behind design, Monogram knows the importance of this as well. For Monogram, the story is in the details that create appliances that your clients love. For the client that appreciates luxury, performance, and craftsmanship, be sure to specify Monogram for their kitchen, right? Go to monogram.com/Luanne and sign up for the designer program and see everything they have to help you on your next project. Now, when Darrell's team reached out to me originally, I was absolutely excited and delighted to have him on the show. And as I said, because we don't have this opportunity that much, okay? But this conversation didn't actually go the way I thought it would. However, I really like the way it went. His passion for critical thinking and the true creative aspect behind design is something to think about. Don't you agree? Do you agree? I'm kind of curious. All right. So I know that we're living in a world of social media. So you might not have thought much about whether or not you go to Pinterest for inspiration before this. I know I didn't. I mean, I'm not a designer. You know that. But I'm just saying, this was a new idea for me, and I wonder if this describes you or if you've been inspired to maybe go deeper, as Darrell has encouraged us to do. All right. Now, and I really hope that you heard that this wasn't a matter of him thinking or saying that you're duplicating someone else's design, like specifically ripping it off, right? It was less about what you are doing if you go to Pinterest or look at someone else's design, and more about what you're not doing, right? Not spending the time in the beginning of a project to really make it your own, right? He wants you to go through those steps. He wants you to learn to start with the story that you want to tell and then express that in your design. Okay. He says when you start with style, it's not the same thing. So let me ask you, where do you sit with his observations? Are you really truly creating your own designs and ideas? All right. And understand, I'm not asking for me. I'm not asking for Darrell. You don't have anything to prove, certainly not to me, and I know not to him as well. But maybe do you have something to prove to yourself? Right? And if deep down this resonated with you, maybe there's some truth in it, and maybe there is something for you and your business in it, because it occurs to me if this spoke to you, right? For those of you that are truly, truly passionate about this, okay, then if it is a new idea, if it is the first time someone's taught that to you, because that's what happens, right? Maybe you came to design from a second career. Maybe you came to design, maybe you did do the full 4-year education, but you never ran across that one professor that made you think this way. They taught you well, they taught you your skills, they taught you all of the practical aspects of creating design. But it does take someone to push you to think deeper. And that's why I love the conversation, because if you truly are passionate about the design side, and this happens to be a new idea for you, whether you're designing 1 year or 30 years, I think it's an exciting opportunity, basically, to explore it for yourself, right? So, and of course, Darrell had some practical advice on how to go about this. So if it is become a new little passion project of yours to dig into this and explore this for yourself a little bit, go over to luannigara.com/goodie, because we put together some of the tips that he outlined. So you have that as a reference, right? luannigara.com/goodie. All right. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that we have the soft launch of LuAnn University in September. Okay. So we're in September now. The card is open. As we are listening to this show, you've probably got about 2 weeks left before the classes start. And I just want to remind you that we have increased confidence, increased profit with business and life coach and my friend Desi Cresswell. All right. So this is for you if you struggle with confidence and mindset and it holds you back from being everything you can be in your business. Okay. I'll tell you what, if you have a problem billing for every hour that you're worth, this is where you want to come. Okay. If you're in that cycle of being afraid to give an invoice or constantly adjusting invoices down or always having problems on projects with trades or vendors, this is rooted in you, okay, in between your ears, okay? But Desi can help you with it. And I want you to get that help, okay? And then, of course, we have Design Build for Profit with my friend Jenny Slingerland. And then we have The Profit is in the Numbers, both the 101 and the 201 course, 101 by Kat Anderson and 201 by Peter Lang. The 101 is entry level. Come in, get yourself organized on software-based accounting. Get your chart of accounts set up, understand how to put all of your information in. You know that saying garbage in, garbage out. So come learn how to do it once and for all, to get it in there and to know and understand how it works in there and what it means. And then the 201 with Peter Lang is that next level. You understand your numbers. You understand your QuickBooks. You understand how to read your reports. But do you know how to project for, can you hire? Can you rent a studio? Do you have the pipeline to support anything that you want to do in the future? Right? Or are you set up for taxes? So these are these nuances, the differences between these two courses. Okay. So you have The Profit is in the Numbers.com, Increase Confidence, IncreaseProfit.com, and DesignBuildForProfit.com. All right. I really hope that you walk away from today's episode with a different tweak, all right, about your design and what it means to be a designer. At the end of the day, you are a creative, all right? I'm a creative, right? And that means we have a responsibility and a commitment to storytelling, to art, to creating, right? How do we call ourselves creators if we don't think deeply and look inside about the things that we create, right? So I just love this point of view. I think it's an interesting thing to consider. I would be curious to know how you feel about it. All right. Definitely go ahead on Instagram. Speak to me there in the post for this show on Instagram. I'm at LuAnn Nigara. All right. And if you take a look and you're good in this area, yay. And if you need to put a little work in this area, I bet if you do, you'll feel better for it. You'll look back at your career and think differently at the body of work that you've created. Okay. And you know what? If it's not for you, it's okay. The design police aren't coming out for you. Okay. Oh my goodness. The bottom line is the only one who can decide this is you. All right. So thank you tons for listening today. And I really do hope that you decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.